All right, so we're going to keep this one short and sweet, and it's going to be very similar to last week's video. We're going to just do a bottom end, so that will include crank going in, cams going in, cam gears going on, and a 4-speed transmission. We've got another 4-speed gearbox rebuild kit from Dan. The dude who owns this engine just went ahead and bought one of these, had it sent to me, which I love, works out great. We've got our 2 little packets, some fun postcards, Mark Drew's, and I'm sure Dan told me who this was and I've already forgotten, but anyway, we got everything we need in here. I've got everything pretty well prepped. Got some bearings, I've got a clean transmission, and so we're gonna go ahead and just get this knocked out. Also, I wanted to shout out Todd. He watched the last video and saw me wrestling that pre-unit without a stand because I give them all away, and he went ahead and sent me one. So huge shout out to Todd for sending me that. So super cool and awesome. He's a pretty rad dude. First thing we're going to do is start getting all of our bearings in. So we've got our 2 main bearings, and then we're going to do the transmission bearings. I am going to use propane today, so let's get started on this drive side. Drive side gets the 2-piece bearing. I'm going to just remind it to be flat. Alright, when it rings like that, I'm pretty confident it's fully seated at home. Didn't have to go too crazy. I'm going to set this one to the side now. We'll start in on the timing side, which will also get the 4th gear or high gear bearing, and then the needle bearing. It'll be the closed-in one, so we'll get into Dan's kit, but I'm going to get the ball bearing and the timing side first. So we're going to get that one warmed up next. Same deal. Should just fall nice and easily to the bottom, and then we're just gonna remind it. Oh, see, we got a little bit there. There, that's flat. So that's why it's always a good idea, even if you think like I kind of that feels like it went to the bottom. Not quite. Okay, so now we're gonna warm up this, which we need to get out of our kit. Very neatly packaged. We'll get this opened up, get some, install with seal facing outward. So keep that in mind. And usually this doesn't take much to get it warm enough, just because it's such a thin layer all the way around as to what holds it in. So not as much time invested on that one. And while it's still warm, drive that needle bearing in too. I gotta go get my tool. Also, don't forget to put your retaining clip in. That would not be good. So now, I'm gonna really quick install the needle bearing. Also, we do have our oil seal to go in there too, but we gotta wait for it to cool off. And you have 2 needle bearings. One is the through bearing, and that goes on the inner transmission cover. And then you have your other needle bearing, and that is going to have a capped end. And so that's what you're going to install into the case. Now, there is a special tool. You can make this. There is dimensions, how to make it in the manual. So please use the tool. You want to put pressure around that lip and not into the back of the bearing, because you'll blow that backside out. This is you want to make sure you're using a proper installation tool. It also will have a little relief for the locator pin for your bushing, so you want to make sure you get that aligned properly. there is a specified depth on that too. Realistically, what you're trying to do is you want the outer edge to be behind the thickness of the thrust washer, but you also don't want to drive it all the way flat. You kind of want to use it to locate the thrust washer, but also not be proud of the thrust washer. That's a better way to say it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we have two important steps need to happen on this half of the case. We're going to stick our cams in, and then we are also going to go ahead and fit our high gear, fourth gear. It's a lot easier to get it fitted with the sprocket and making sure everything is seated and appropriate, because nothing is worse than getting all of this transmission together and then going to put on your high gear sprocket and it doesn't want to go on. So it's super easy to, one, check it now, and then two, get everything tightened up and it's seated properly and you know it's all good to go, instead of fumbling with the entire assembled bottom end. So that being said, we need to get this bushing out and get the new one in and get it honed to match the main shaft. The factory ones are one piece. It's the entire length from here all the way to protruding. And so when we do this kibble white one, it is a two-piece. And so you have to obviously drive one in flush, and then the other side you're going to have it proud. And I believe it tells you all of the individual instructions here. And the reason they split it is because it will allow more oil to live inside that center cavity, and then keeping the bushings more lubricated. Okay, so right here it tells you the year and then what the protrusion is. So it looks like, 68 to 72 is flush, 50 to 62 is flush. So we're in that 63 to 68 range. So it's going to stick out 0.437. So I'm going to go get this out. I'm using an arbor press. You don't need to see me struggle doing that. So I'm going to get this pressed out really quick, and then I will press these both in, and then we'll go hone them. So I'll be right back. Both of these are the same, but they do have a lead-in for you. So realistically, that's all you have to really pay attention to. But I'm going to press this one in from this side, and then I'm going to press this one in from this side, and this will go flush, and this will stick out that 437, which what I'm going to do is going to make a mark. I'm going to 437 here. I'm going to make a mark so that way I can just go up to my score that I'm going to create, and then that way I don't have to keep checking it. Hopefully it'll be accurate, since I didn't use red, I used black, so maybe it won't be as precise. Okay, again, I'll be right back. I'm just using an arbor press. I've got a driver, and so just keeping it nice and square, not causing any damage. And then this will be tight on the main shaft. Well, it should be tight on the main shaft, and then we'll hone it a little bit to match. So, like I said, we're now tight on the main shaft, so we need to go give ourselves some more room. For those of you who have a sun hone, good for you. For those of you who don't, find somebody who does and is trustworthy and also has a .900 mandrel. This is all things that are very worthwhile doing with the right people. So find a shop that you trust and you want to continue to do work with, so that way you can build a worthwhile Triumph and you can trust it and enjoy riding it and not hate it. So I'm going to just slowly, with a little bit of pressure, start kind of truing this up. Obviously, when you just installed 2 bushings into it, it's going to be a little bit wonky to begin with. So we're going to start there and then just slowly sneak up on the fitment on here. I'm not going to do any like measuring. It's just going to be a by feel fit. So we'll know when we're ready. You can kind of feel the high spots, and then as they get knocked down, it's easier and easier. I should have gloves on, but I'm in a rush. I want to get this whole video done. I have the cutting pressure pretty low because I don't want to flare this loose end out and then have this end really, really tight. You know, that always is going to be affected. If you have nothing to resist it, it's going to just expand the end and cause you problems. Same thing applies when you're doing cylinders and stuff. You don't want to have your cutting pressure super high so you get done faster, because you just created this insane taper at that skirt where nothing is really behind it to create, you know, resistance. We're getting a nice smooth cutting action now. It's clearly, you know, consistent all the way through. There's no high spots or low spots. Cut 2, it's done. So we're going to use our big vice grips. You could use like a chain or something. I'm not gonna get like super carried away right now. We'll retorque it again later, but we just want to get it like as snugged as possible just by hand. And so we're ready here. We've got our seal in, and so I'm going to stick 4th gear up through, and then I'll probably have to hold it. We'll stick our sprocket on, which we already checked to make sure it was happy. And then, where'd our tab washer go? We're gonna fit our tab washer over beautifully, and we're going to tighten our nut down later on when we've got some weight to this, but right now it's not going to be the easiest. So we're just going to get it snugged up, and then we won't worry about the tab wash or anything. Yeah, I'm not going to bend it over. Okay, so that is at least nice and snug. We know we're drawn all the way in, so that's all that's really important. So now that that's fitted, we're going to do our cams in the vice trick. So we are going to go up to the vise and do that now. So move around as much as possible. If you watched the last video, you'll remember that our first step is going to be to check to make sure our tools want to thread onto the cams. Alright, so we got both intake and exhaust do want to thread on. And then we are going to check to make sure the cam gear threads are both good. That one's good. Don't drop it. That one's good. So we know our tools are going to work. And then we've got our 2 brand new keys, and we're going to double check to make sure those fit. So fits in the, I've already done this, so I know, but fits in the cam, and then check to make sure it's going to fit in the gear. Yep. Same with the other one, blah, blah, blah. You get the drift. The drift. You get what I'm trying to say. So now I'm going to drop that. I'm going to grab the cam by the bottom lobe, and this is our intake. You can tell it's the intake because of the way that it is. I'm going to set my case over it like so. Take the key install it. And then we are going to thread on our tool. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. Hold on. The screen on my camera is incredibly small, so it makes it very difficult for me to know what you guys can see. Okay. So now I'm going to install tool. About right there. All right. Take that off. Wish you could see, but the key is away from you. I didn't think that through, but timing mark, keyway. I'm gonna let it down until I can kind of feel it drop over that key. Maybe. There we go. Now, when you're doing this, once you get started, you're going to want to double check to make sure you're not pushing your key out of the way. That happens pretty often. And of course, I've got not a great view, but I can already tell that that feels really good. Okay, cool. If it gives you any fits or resistance, you should double check to make sure everything is looking the way it should, because what can happen is that cam wheel, the gear will, instead of slipping over the key, it will instead like start pushing it out of the way, and then you start wedging and you can cause some damage to your cam bushing. So just, if it feels funny, stop and start over. You'll feel really silly if you let something like a silly little cam key be the reason that you have to spend more money on repairs. So repeat the process. The exhaust cam. I'll face the keyway towards you guys this time. Not that you're going to be able to see it, but it's the sentiment of what I'm doing, I guess. Oh, you know what? I got to move closer to the edge. We'll go out here. That'll work better. Over there. Now, you probably noticed that I didn't put any assembly lube. I'm going to load up both of these little feed holes here, and then I'll probably do that periodically through the assembly, just to really make sure I drive it. But I figured with as much as I'm handling everything, I wanted to keep this one dry. This one might need a little bit of manipulating here. There we go. Alright, that's seated. Alright, timing mark, keyway. Oh yeah, right over it. Just so smooth. And then, oh, god damn it. Install your tool. Left hand thread. Timing mark, keyway. Oh wow, we didn't even need the driver for that one. I'm going to just use this to make sure we are drawn on all the way. Alright, nice and snug. Cool. we are ready to get a crank in this thing. We now want to get the other half of our two-piece bearing on the crank. These are usually pretty tight, which is a good thing. And so what I usually do is kind of get them like squared up to where it like won't really go on anymore. And then I have this driver that I've got. So a couple good wraps usually ends up, you know, boom. So it doesn't take much. You just want to get it on there nice and square so you don't, you know, chew anything up. And then I usually will throw a little bit of assembly lube. Engine oil would work too, but I like assembly lube. So now that I've got that on, I can now set it in the case. So I'm going to hold this. I'll move you here in a second, but I'm going to go ahead and drop this in. I always put the rods like at the bottom like that to protect them, and then just set it down in like that. Make sure we're spinning nice, everything's good. And I will leave it kind of down like that to protect the rods. So now we need to get our breather disc in before we forget. Again, just like the last video, make sure it fits, make sure it spins freely. These things are pretty hard, so if there's any burrs or anything, they will grab and chew everything up. So drop it down in there, nice and square. Okay, I was gonna move you guys. I don't know if you can see down in there or not. Might be too dark. Anyway, you want to make sure that you can, we'll use this for a pick. You want to make sure that you can spin it. And if as long as it's nice and free and feels good, then you know you're fine. Get your little bit of slippery down in there and the spring. And make sure that the spring is seated and not crooked. It's nice and even down between inside that breather disc, and make sure everything's still moving. Okay, so now we're good. You guys have seen me use the 1211 3 bond on case halves. You've seen me use the blue Hylamar on case halves. I was talking to Dan the other day, again, another shout out to Dan, and he asked if I'd ever tried the 1184, and I said no, and he said he really likes this for case halves. And so, of course, I told him to send me some so I could give it a try. So we are going to try this today. I do like the idea that it's gray because it will disappear much better. But all around, the specs on this stuff is way better. It's got a pretty good work time, so I can get going after it and get it all spread out, and then we will throw our other half on. It's very thin, which I like. It's going to be a lot easier to spread. Ooh, yeah, this is way better. I should probably have gloves on or using a tool or something. You should probably wear gloves. So it doesn't take much. You just want a nice thin layer. You can actually get yourself in trouble if you add too much gasket maker, because you are going to prevent the surfaces from touching, which is realistically the goal. I mean, it'd be better if we didn't use any sealant, but that's not an option. Okay, I'm gonna get this off my finger immediately. I think it says setup time is like a minute or something like that, which is perfect. Gives us a minute to discuss. When I go to set this down, it's pretty common that that timing side will be tight. And if it's not crazy, I will just go ahead and use my driver and give it a couple taps on the inner race to push it the rest of the way on. If it's really fighting me and I'm having a lot of problems and it's like binding the crank, what I've done is I will heat up something that is the diameter of the race and let it sit on the bearing race, just long enough to kind of transfer some heat and get it warm. I don't like putting a flame directly to bearings. I just would rather not do that. That's why I like heating something else up and then just using the thermodynamics. We will at least attempt without using the heat. The other thing I was going to point out is make sure that like the dowel that is supposed to be there is a dowel pin here, and you want to make sure you get those back in. If there's any locating dowels, whether it's a cover or whatever, just make sure you get those back in if they're supposed to be there. So we wanted to make sure we got that one. And then I've got my hardware here, and we will get it together. We're going to get some assembly lube in our bushings, both sides here, get a little bit on the cams. And the one thing we're going to be focused on too, the other thing we're going to be focused on is going to be getting our breather disc and our cam aligned on the intake. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that as we lower it down. We know our rod is out of the way after I moved it out of the way. So we are now touching the timing bearing. So now we're going to see if it wants to go. Getting close. So I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. It's really faint, but one of the easiest ways to make sure that this is seated properly is if you get that spring back, because then that's telling you that the tangs on that breather disc are in the release of the cam, and that spring is doing its job. So we know that's good. It's free spinning, and now we'll check to make sure our crank is also free spinning. So it feels good too. So we are going to get hardware in this case now. Okay, so I'm hoping, I was going to put it in my stand, but I'm hoping at this angle I can actually show this at the best angle I can. I don't know, we'll see. I need to go put this last bushing in first gear, and then we are ready to assemble. So I'm going to go do that really quick, and then we are going to talk about transmission, and I want to go home because I have to go smoke a prime rib. Okay, we did this once before, but I'm going to do it again. When you get a hodgepodge of gears here and you're wondering where they all go, there's only one right way to do this. So you can screw up, but what you're going to do is you're going to look at all your gears, and you're going to realize that there are two different internal diameters, and you can also tell these shafts do not match. So just looking at them, you can kind of tell that's a pretty big internal diameter. It's not going to fit on the main shaft. So we know right away that that goes on lay shaft. And then we're going to look at this one. It's smaller. Probably fits on main shaft, and yes it does. So we're good there. Smaller, main shaft, larger, lay shaft. Pretty easy. So now you need to know what order. Because you have a fixed gear, you need to have a freewheeling gear next to it. And then also you need to look at your dogs and dog houses. So if we look at these, we've got also a gear in already, so we know that's on the main shaft, but we are mostly just focusing on these two. So this one has dog houses, this one doesn't. So that automatically means we are going to put a freewheeling with dog houses next to a fixed gear with dogs. And then because these share shift forks, that means this one goes here. Oh my God, doing this one-handed is not the best idea. So now main shaft is ready to go. So now we have lay shaft. It goes this way where the fixed gear is on the inside line. And then same thing, we've got dogs and dog houses. So that means the dog houses are going to go towards the dogs. This one can't. I hope this is really frustrating for you to watch, because it's really frustrating to do one-handed. Anyway, so now you've got that set up. We are sharing a shift fork, so that means these two need to be up against each other. Same deal. Oh my God. Okay, so dogs, dog houses, same deal. So that is how you identify what gears go where. So that one wasn't as refined as the last one, but I'm just trying to do it in a different way to hope that maybe certain people need to hear things in a different way, and they'll learn from them. I know that definitely applies to me. I don't always understand things the first time, so here is a different approach. So now we just need to install all of this. So I'm going to put it back on the stand so I can use both hands, and then hopefully give you a very good idea of how to install this. Before we get too far, I don't want to overlook the most valuable part of this whole kit that Dan offers. It is this little booklet. Well, there's two actually, but this one has sections from factory. He's got little tips of his own. Just all sorts of very, very valuable information in there. And then you also get this cool little changes in gearboxes from 68 to 70, and it has a lot of very valuable information in it. So that alone is worth it. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, let's get this in. We are going to start by putting in our plunger housing down here, and then we are going to take the cam plate and we are going to slick it up a little bit so we have something there for later, just wherever you can, and obviously the spindle and a little bit in here. And we are going to do the same to our plunger and spring. I'm going to get that slippery, and I'm going to install it. And now what I like to do is take cam plate, get it started, kind of have to work around on fourth gear there, and then get it to where the cam plate is up against the back of the quadrant, or the cam plate is up against the back of the plunger. Now I'm going to take my finger and block your view, and I'm going to push that plunger down, and then I'm going to push my finger off with the cam plate. So you could use a screwdriver too, but I just use my finger. But you just push it down so it's depressed, and then you are going to just push your screwdriver or finger away with that. So very easy. And then we are going to put it in the position where both of these wings are facing out. I thought I had another one I could show you a visual. Okay, so it's between second and third. There's a small little notch right there. I don't know if you can see that, but that's the current position we are in. Now I'm going to take my thrust washer and get a little assembly. You could use grease, anything to help like suction it up against the back of the case here, and use the locator dowel pin, and that will kind of live right there. Now our next step is going to be taking lay shaft here, and I'm going to add some more slippery to the end so that needle bearing is nice and happy, and I'm going to set it in place. Okay, cool. So now I really hope this is a good angle. Lay shaft is in, fourth gear is in, quadrant is, cam plate is in. So now we can put second and third of lay shaft is going to go in now. And so we are going to use our assembly lube. You could also use gear oil if you would like. We've got our two gears ready, and then you're going to look at your two shift forks, and if you look at them on the end, you can see that one is larger than the other. This one, having the larger radius, is going to be for our lay shaft. The smaller radius is for our main shaft, which is smaller radius, main shaft, larger radius, lay shaft. So now I'm going to stick that in the track there, make sure it's feeling good, and then you have this pin or nipple or whatever you're going to call it right here, and you need to get a roller on it. and you want that roller to stay there, so you can use grease, gear oil, or assembly lube to get it sticky so it wants to stay. Now I'm going to slide that bad boy on there and let the little roller fall into place. So now it looks something like that. The next step is our second and third from our main shaft, and we're going to do the same thing, but this time when we stick our shift fork on, it is going to face towards the back. So we're going to take it and it's going to sit on top like so. So when we put it in, this section of the shift fork is going to face that way. And we're going to put some lube on that pin there, put our roller on top of it, and we are going to hold it very silly with our fingers. I like to stick my middle finger in the 2 gears, and then I will use like my thumb. Here, let me see if I can get far enough away. I'll use like my thumb or something to kind of hold the shift fork on there. However you feel is most comfortable for you. Maybe you just do your middle finger. I don't know, I can't contort that way. So now you got it like this. You have your little assembly here. You're going to drop it into, you're going to favor the back of the transmission, so that way you're dragging your gears kind of along the backside, staying as far away from that cam plate as you can. And then when you finally get kind of closer to where it's going to be, you're going to slowly come forward and dropping the shift fork at the same time. You want that to go down and into place. So I ride along the back and then let it roll forward, and as it's rolling forward, I'm going to put the roller in its desired track on the cam plate. And so now that that is happy and in place, we're going to quickly get our shift fork spindle in place, so that way we don't have to worry about our forks falling or moving. Now if you get through this near the lay shaft shift fork and you're trying to get down, and then you get to your main shaft shift fork and it doesn't want to go, sometimes you do have to take like a pick or something and play with that main shaft shift fork in order to let that spindle find its way through. And now at this point we are able to put our main shaft in, kind of spinning while we find our way. And then we can take first gear and put it on lay shaft. Now, when everything's assembled, those two will mesh like that because you are going to torque your kickstart assembly first, which is going to draw main shaft towards this transmission cover side, which would give you proper location on your main shaft. So that's installing the gears. So now we are ready to do this outer cover. These two are the shifter and kickstart bushing. These go on the outermost cover. We're not going to do those today. That'll be for a different video. But they do come with the kit, which is awesome. And then you also get this one that goes here in the inner cover. So we will press that in. We're going to press these bearings in. The same rule applies with this bearing. It's that constant pressure on that outer edge. Don't destroy this bearing. It's fragile. And then you're going to run it into where when this bushing is the thrust washer is installed, you want this to still locate the thrust washer, but you don't want this edge to protrude past that outer edge of the thrust washer there. So just that kind of gives you an idea of what you're trying to achieve on these. But either way, it also comes with these two cotter pins for your quadrant. And so I'm going to go ahead, get this warmed up. and then I'm going to get these bearings in and this bushing in, and then we'll put our clip in, we'll install our quadrant, and then we're going to push this thing home. So I'll show you how to time it, and then we're going to be done, man. This is it. Bushing is in, new bearing is in, needle bearing is in. We're going to drop in our little clip here. Really didn't mean to make this one a rush job, but I didn't get a video last week, and then obviously put this one off to the last minute, and then my day has been insane with a bunch of people coming in, so didn't go the way I wanted, but I really want to get something up, so this is what it's gonna be. When you're putting, if you took your quadrant out, when you're putting it back in, if you look at it, you can kind of see there's two different radiuses. This one's really tight and this one's pretty open. The tight side faces downward. So then when you're holding your cover, you're going to just stick it in like so. I don't know if you saw any of that, but so kind of gives you an idea there. And then obviously you check to make sure your hole is clean and you don't have anything to worry about with that spindle. And there is the locator pin and then the slot. So you're gonna slip this guy down in there. And then you want to try and find that hole. Hopefully it's not too far. I'll just take a pair of pliers and kind of spin it until, if this outer hole isn't lined up, then maybe try to do that one first. Oops. Oh my gosh. So I'm gonna get that one started. Now I can kind of check and see. I think we might be close here. So just spin it until you see, there it is. Okay, so now I've got my pin lined up, and then I like to drop the cotter through the top. I've taken a lot of these apart where they've gone from both directions, but I like this way because then I can swing it open this side and I can draw this one towards me and start pushing that one away from me, and then I can flip it over to this side and it's pretty easy to get to. So I prefer to do it that way. But now we've got this cover's ready to go. I do need to Loctite that pin in, but we can do that after it's on. It's not important right now. I do need to put two studs in that cover really quick. So I'm gonna get those two studs in, and then we will go ahead and press that cover on. All right, for this last bit, I'm just going to stick some of our new sealant along this cover here, and then I will send it home. We will align it appropriately, and then it's timed and ready. I obviously have a lot left to do on this engine, but I just figured since we had done that bottom end, well, I guess we did an entire engine on last video. I just got this transition kit in. It kind of made sense to do this video. I've done obviously quite a few transition videos so far, and I'm still getting questions, so I just want to try and word everything as many different ways as I can to try and hopefully get through to anyone and everyone, depending on how they learn, or what they're hearing, I guess, because I know that's a lot of how I learn is just dependent on how it's told to me. So I figure I might as well try and do it as many ways as I can. But I got a nice layer of our 1184 on, and I'm going to let it sit for a second, and then we will drive it on. Got our bushing in place. Everything's looking good. line up our 2 studs. Start sliding over main shaft. Make sure lay shaft. You'll notice lay shaft does have the tack drive on it, and it does not have a tack drive. This is a combination of a couple engines. The guy had 2, and we were trying to make one good one. So that's why it looks the way it does. Okay, so you can hear, I've got a gap, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of an inch up here between the 2, and I'm already engaged. And so I'm going to pull it out just a little bit, and then that should drop. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, I know I'm really close, so I'm going to grab the quadrant, and I'm going to draw an imaginary line between the center of this bushing, this tooth, and then the center line of main shaft. And when you draw that line, that's where you're going to hold it. And then I'm going to, okay, so now I'm good. That's engaged into a tooth. I can then drive it home. Usually what's the tight is your main shaft in that is usually what is going to, or it is your locator dowels that were in our case. That is also going to kind of give you a little bit of a fit, so you may have to persuade it. We'll use the wood handle of a... There you go. So we are now, I'm going to spin it there. We're now home. So I've got some hardware to throw in, and down here, here, and here, and that is how you do a transmission. Now, that one was pretty quick and dirty compared to the last one, but I just wanted to take advantage of having that kit and kind of walk you through it. There'll be more. Each one will try and do a little different than the last, and then that way more of you guys can kind of pick up little bits here and there. But that is now ready for the outer cover, which has a whole new set of little bits and pieces. I'll do that in another video. It may not be on this engine exactly, but it's the end of the year. I am going to try and keep this up. I want to keep consistently uploading and giving you guys stuff to see. We will get back onto my personal bike very soon. I really would like to see that move on to the next stages. I also have a new project. I did get a hold of a new Royal Enfield Interceptor, like a brand new one actually. And not only do I want to do the big bore kit because I can, but I also have some big plans with modifying it. So again, I don't know if that's something that you guys would want to see on here. I know this is mostly vintage stuff, but if anybody does want to see me play around with something newer, I don't know, maybe we'll do it in and out, but I don't know. I just don't want to start putting up content that people aren't interested in seeing. So anyway, have a good Yule, winter solstice, and I will see you after the first of the year.